So today I'm with Heather from the Women's Rights Network, and today we're going to discuss issues about gender critical feminism and the rise of transgender ideology. Heather, can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Heather Binning and I am a founding member of the Women's Rights Network. I'm not the founding member because there are a lot of women involved at the start of it. I happen to be out of work, and when I got the opportunity to start building this network. So it was a bunch of women locally coming together to start talking. There was a desire expressed from other women around the country that we capitalised on, brought them in, introduced them to each other, and they also started talking locally. I thought, what do we need to do now? We need to come up with some information for them to use to decide what they want to do in their own areas, because the particular issues change from area to area. Some might be in schools, some might be in hospitals. There might be a bunch of women that are more concerned with perhaps their own children. So we produced a number of different types of material information to help them decide what they wanted to do themselves to fight this encroaching ideology.
So what does the Women's Rights Network stand for?
It stands for sex, not gender. Really, is what it boils down to. We're against male-bodied people in female-only spaces. It's important that women have the spaces designated for themselves where they can be confident of being secure and safe. And that's been established for quite a long time now, but not as long as you might think. If you remember that we only got the vote around about 100 years ago, so it's been a long time coming. Women's sports, of course, there was, for a long time, there was no women's sports, and gradually, bit by bit, we had women's sports established and introduced into the Olympics, and reaching a stage when actually women's sports achieved some great things. So to have that demeaned by the idea that male-bodied and physical men can compete as women is quite insulting. And so we are here, the Women's Rights Network is here to reintroduce, to get back to the status quo of women being women and men being men.
So at the start you said sex, not gender. What is gender in comparison to sex, and why not gender?
Gender is how you might feel on any particular day, as my understanding of gender. So you might feel like wearing loose clothing, trousers, trainers perhaps. You might feel maybe a little bit more masculine that day. That doesn't change your biological sex. That does not change. And sex is what is important. It's not how you feel, it's how you really are. It's really important things, particularly when it comes to medicine. There are different symptoms. Women and men experience different symptoms. They have different diseases. They're susceptible to different things. It's really important that, for instance, the NHS has accurate statistics on somebody's sex, so that if they're inviting somebody to a cervical smear, they invite the right people for a cervical smear, and that is women. It is sex, women. It is not gender. It's not, if a man feels like a woman today, he should have a cervical smear. That doesn't work.
So recently in the UK, a range of leaders can't give a definition of woman, or can't say if a woman has a penis or if a woman has a cervix. Why do you think that is? Why can't they give a definition?
It's utterly appalling and quite farcical that they can't give a definition of this so basic an issue. And it can only be politicians bend with the wind according to how they think the public line is going. So if they think, or if they are told through their polling, that the public mood is one that men, yes indeed, trans women are women, then they will go along with that line for the sake of getting votes. That doesn't work now with this instance, because it's such an I keep coming back to the word insult. It is an insult to women, and we are working on this campaign, Respect My Sex If You Want My Ex, to say to them that actually the votes, you're going the wrong way for the votes. I don't believe that any of these politicians believe that you can change sex, that anyone can change sex. So I believe that it's politics only.
So what is the campaign Respect My Sex If You Want My Ex?
Well, it's saying to them, if you can't define what a woman is, how can we trust you to make decisions about anything else in our life? It's such a fundamental, basic human right to be identified accurately by the sex you are. It is on your birth certificate. It should not change. The Gender Recognition Act that was introduced in, I think it's 2004, allowed for a changing of the birth certificate. I think that's wrong. I think most of the women in the Women's Rights Network think that's wrong, that your birth certificate is something that should not change, like your age. You cannot change your age. And that's a statement of fact that you have to live with and you have to deal with throughout your life, and it shouldn't change. So respect my sex. If you want my vote, you have to be able to define what a woman is. You have to be able to recognise that I have specific needs that are laid down in law. I'm not wanting anything new. I'm wanting the law as it is, applied correctly.
What has the campaign done so far, and what's the methods of campaigning it's used?
Oh, the methods of campaigning are absolutely fabulous. We're here in Northern Ireland today, and they've a couple of billboards up here. They've used our banner with the slogan in a number of different locations. It's marvellous to see. They've got a female symbol up on Black Mountain Hill that can be seen from the city. Across the country, they've bedecked statues of famous women like Emily Pankhurst with ribbons, and pictures have been taken. Leaflets are being delivered through letterboxes. Conversations are being had in town squares. In Hustings, leaflets are handed out at Hustings, to the dismay of some candidates. But no offence is meant, and no offence to the general public certainly has been taken. The idea behind it is that the public are able to ask, or encouraged to ask, anybody standing for election whether they can define what a woman is. And the implication is, if they can't do that, then they wouldn't get the vote of the individual asking the question. We've had letters back from some candidates saying that they support the campaign and they can define what a woman is. We've had some back saying that actually we're being rather unkind and we're being transphobic, and it's a small number of people that are the most marginalised and victimised. They're referring to, on the whole, less than 1% of the population who are transsexual, and that's those that feel so badly that their minds cannot align with their bodies that they have to undergo quite dramatic surgery to their otherwise healthy bodies to change their gender. And this is not, the movement is much, much bigger. The ideological movement that we're fighting against, that is trying to break down barriers of women's safe spaces, is much broader than just that small percentage of the population.
Have you received any backlash from your campaigning?
We haven't received significant backlash, I have to say. I'm very, very delighted to report. In some instances, yes, the billboards I talked about in Northern Ireland, there's been some defacing of billboards. There have been some comments shouted by passing members of the public to some of the stalls we've had in town centres. There's been nothing significant, and I'm absolutely delighted, because for me, that heralds a complete change. A year ago, that would not have been the case. It would have been very different, I believe. But in that year, we've had a number of successful court cases. Maya Fostata, for one, who had lost a job because she said that sex matters, and she has ultimately, we're waiting for the outcome of her latest court case, but it was decreed that believing in sex, not gender, was worthy of respect in a democratic society. And there's been a big shift, I think, since then.
Why do those who are for trans ideology, why do they call those who believe that sex is important instead of gender, why do they call them TERFs or transphobic? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think whatever word they use is not necessarily what we should focus on. The fact is that they're angry and they cross and they want us to be quiet because they know that we're speaking the truth, and they don't want the truth to be heard above their own slogans that they chant themselves, such as trans women are women. So the specific word is not important that they use, but they have been trying to silence women. They have successfully silenced women for a good number of years now, and we're at the stage now where women that are unhappy about this have grown in number, and we've been getting our information out, we've been getting our point of view out, and so we're beginning to see more of a backlash against that, the ideological behaviour.
Why do you think there are a great number of women who are supportive of people transitioning and biological men using women's bathrooms?
Well, I think there's a growing number of women that are speaking out against it. There is also a very large number of women that are still afraid to speak against it because they will be called those words transphobic and worry about losing their jobs or at least their social networks, perhaps, because of it. So there are a lot of women that are still afraid to speak out. One of the jobs of the Women's Rights Network, I believe, is to encourage them to be braver and to speak out, and that we have your backs on a daily basis. More and more women are doing that. And then I think you've got some women that still believe that they are being kind, that they don't want to be seen to be unkind to anybody. It's women's traditional job to be kind and to be carers and to be mothers and to be people that look after others. And I think that overrides, in some instances, a common sense. But I think that is beginning to change.